One thing about life, it's unpredictable. And I've talked before about how I have anxiety. And let me tell you, one thing my anxiety did not prepare me for was for us to have a big cut in our income. I foresee it happening very soon, probably within the next week, which will start affecting our pay in March. My husband, as I've said before, is an LPN. He's been working at this location for about 6 years now, but he was always what's called PRN, or as needed, which is you just have a requirement of picking up a shift at least once a month. He was doing that for the first 3 years. And then in 2022, which technically was about 2.5 years ago now, he moved to being full-time, which full-time is considered 3 shifts a week typically when you're a nurse. So works 3 shifts a week, but technically how the pay period works, it goes from Monday to Sunday. Whenever he would work, it was 2 shifts at a time, which turned out to be 4 shifts in a pay week every other week. I noticed this very early on. I'm like, wait, why are they paying you for overtime? Vaguely remember him bringing this up and them just being like, yes, that's correct. About a few months later, I know for sure he communicated with someone about it, again, regarding another issue. So I say that to say there's been multiple times that it's been communicated. However, in the end of 2024, new administration came in. Someone who's been over the location for a while, retired, or went to another facility, what have you. There's been a lot of new people coming in. This month, in February, someone randomly reached out at the job saying that how his shift is working, it's causing overtime, which we've known for a while. And they want to change his shift, which they're completely entitled to do. They're completely within their right, that if they want to cut those costs or they find something going on that isn't technically needed, obviously totally within their right to want to change that, to move one of the shifts to the other week. Hey, I do want to clarify one thing about this whole thing and just make it clear that it's not that his job is doing something wrong or overtime isn't available. Technically it's available. It's just that before he was getting pre-scheduled for overtime, and while they're completely within their right to want to change that by moving his shift around, it's still something that is going to impact us financially. So on the 3rd is when the pay period starts. It ended on the 16th. And then also a typical work week would be the 10th through the 16th. So if you see from the 10th through the 16th, you'll see 4 W's, meaning that he worked 4 times in one pay week. He works 12-hour shifts. 12 times 4 is 48. That's 8 hours of overtime that they've been paying him for one pay week in each pay period. So they're wanting to change his shifts around to avoid them having to pay that essentially. His hourly rate isn't an issue. We're absolutely satisfied with his hourly rate, and that's not the issue. It's not something that going to a different company or job would resolve, because they're still going to be paying him the same amount minus any overtime. They're not going to be scheduling him 4 shifts in a week. And sure, he could pick up shifts, do a PRN type of deal again, but that's him working more to make up what's being lost rather than him working more and making additional money. But how does that impact us? I was looking at his pay stub after we got this. It was actually a voicemail. I was looking at his pay stub, and oh my gosh, it looks like he grosses about $400 every paycheck in this overtime and however they do it, whatever. That's a lot of money that we're gonna be missing out on. That's gonna be about $800 a month at least. $10,000 a year. Pay cut, just like that. So that's not fun. Honestly, I've been kind of down about it this whole weekend. I totally feel like people are just within their right to feel. Sometimes things are new, and even though there's people who don't even have a job or getting laid off, whatever right now, I totally believe that people should be able to just feel what they're feeling. And it shouldn't have to get swept under the rug because someone has it worse than you. Someone should be able to say, wow, this is not what I was expecting. I am really down about that, and I just want to kind of sit in that for a little bit. Well, usually I don't like to dwell on things more than a day, or typically I'll say usually I don't have to dwell on things more than a day. I usually get over things. But this weekend I genuinely was just feeling kind of down about it. Because not only is it going to impact us financially, but it's also going to impact our schedule. And honestly, he's been really blessed at how his schedule has worked. He would be off for 5 shifts every other week, which is amazing. And that really is just like how it kind of works with nursing sometimes. That's been amazing. But then it's like also we were thinking what shift would he change? Like he would change probably that Sunday and move it to a different day. But then I'm thinking like, gosh, you know, us trying to work off of each other's schedules, it'll give us less time with like appointments, and sometimes we have to go all together, or sometimes we have to go and one person will be home with the kids. It just kind of makes things difficult in more than one way. So it was just really something I really had to kind of come to terms with, and not to mention the financial side of it. I kind of had felt like we were just getting to a point where with this whole new revamp that we've done with our mortgage payoff journey this year, I felt like we were getting to a point where we had money left over, and then money I was making from other sources was finally going to start being extra, rather than us just trying to meet what we need exactly for sinking funds, the mortgage. Finally feel like this year I'm getting to a point with my Etsy shop and stuff like that to really bring home more money. And so now it's kind of like that money is going to need to be meant to kind of make up for this loss, which granted, I don't think that it'll be $800 of the $400 per paycheck. Let's say we bring home like $300, maybe still $600 a month that we would need to make up for. And I feel like I could, like, that's doable maybe if I really try really hard. But it's hard to just have to make up for that, because not only was the money I was making starting to be extra, a part of it kind of was also helping us meet all the sinking funds that we need for each month. It's a trial and error. You're for sure going to need to change things as they come at you. And sometimes you really just can't predict the things that could happen. So I kind of just feel like paying off this house this year, once it's done, because I'm still believing that we're going to be able to do it. Once it's done, I feel like it'll just make that whole thing that much sweeter, because there's been so many things I feel like we've just had to get through or get over, or had to still make it happen. You know, money has been tight for a while with this mortgage payoff journey. When I was working full-time and trying to reach those goals and doing everything with that, money was tight. I remember making a video like a year ago saying money is really tight and I just can't wait for this to be over. And so yeah, I just think about that. I think about how things have been tight for a while and it just gets to you sometimes, but I just feel like it'll be that much better once it's paid off. Like, it's gonna hit that much different. But it's definitely still reminded me about working and how you really are always just under someone else's control. And I know that's the norm. I know that's the way it's always been, but it really just kind of put things into perspective, because even though I am part-time at my job now and I feel like I have more control over my life, I've also felt like my husband has had a pretty good control. Like, we've always just vocalized how we're so thankful for his schedule and how it's really beneficial for us and spending time together. And he has this great work-life balance, which I still would say that he does, getting 4 shifts off per week. But even more so, you know, he's mentioned things like once he gets to that point at work where he's just like, ugh, I need a break. Here's 5 days off, you know, 5 shifts off in a row. And that's just been really good for him mentally. But it just kind of reminded me like, wow, your job is really always in control. You really have to do whatever they say. It's just sometimes when there's new people that come in, things start to have to change. Like, that's just what happens sometimes. We're trying to set ourselves up financially to get to a point where we can really feel financially free. Obviously, we're always going to have our expenses, property taxes, and things like that. Being able to have some control over a situation is just so beneficial. With my job, things are a lot different than they were even 90 days ago. I would say that things are honestly like at least 80% better. And I really can't ask for anything else. Being able to just work my 4 hours and clock out. Granted, for the last like 10 days I've been on PTO. I just like the best thing we can do for ourselves as people, as human beings who have basic necessities, basic things that we need to do to care for ourselves. The least we can do is try to get some of our time back. I've been very fortunate to do so. My husband's also in a position where he only has to work 3 shifts. Granted, it is 12-hour shifts. He still has that balance. I'm still going to remember to be thankful for that and try to just see the silver lining in it all. At the end of the day, your job, they really just kind of have a hold on what you can and can't do. Not to mention all of these like return to office mandates, which I know it's just like such a controversial time with that, but I truly feel that anybody who's actually done the job, any job that can be done remotely, if you've ever done it remotely and then in the office like I have, you know that your most efficient work is being done from home for majority of people. Sure, there's exceptions to the rule with everything, but majority of the people, your most efficient work is done at home. I haven't worked in the office. I want to say I've done it probably once in about the last 5 years. And that was just I was on a very small team and we just decided to go in the office to spend time with each other, essentially. And I barely got work done that day, truly. And when I think back to being in the office, people are constantly come up to you. They're constantly talking. They're constantly talking about the call they just got off of and that customer and what that customer said and their situation. And hey, what do you think about this? And what would you do in this situation? And hey, and it's constant talking. It's constant interruptions. It's constant not getting work done. Like, I know for a fact, if we had to go back in the office, a lot less work would be done. That's 100% certainty. They would see the work that gets done weekly, daily, monthly, they would see that amount go down significantly. And that's just with anything. Like with anything, you're gonna have the constant interruptions in the office. At home, it's me and my computer. It's me getting a whole bunch of stuff done. It's unfortunate that we are in a time where people are being sent back to work just because like none of the excuses are valid, none of them. And I'm seeing things where they don't even have the capacity to hold these people. They're just sending them to the office just to send them to the office, just to have control and completely change their lives. It does. It completely changes their lives. Obviously, I'm a parent of 2, so I always go back to that. But even if you're not a parent, maybe you've picked up exercising. Maybe you decide, while there's still daylight after I clock out, I'm going on a walk every single day. I'm going to walk 2 miles. I'm going to run. I'm going to go to the grocery store. I'm going to spend time with my pet. That's another thing. Even if you're not a parent, but if you have a pet, I specifically remember multiple coworkers talking about their pets that either get locked up in their cage all day or they're at home watching them on a camera. They're not having that interaction with their owner. Like, I'm not even a pet person like that. And I feel for those types of pets who have to just sit there all day, especially if they're in a cage. But if they're at home just all day, no interaction, you know, and it's not even just 8 hours a day, it's 10 hours a day because maybe you have an hour commute. And that's not a way that I would want my pet to live personally. When it comes to parenting, like me, I pick up my kid from the bus stop. When I was working all day, I would take my break to do that. It wasn't easy, but it's what I had to do. And I was thankful that I could get to his bus stop to pick him up. Just so many things. There's a lot to say about it. It impacts families. It impacts the kids. I just feel really bad for people who are having to kind of uproot their lives. I know on the East Coast of the country in DC, where the people who are being forced to go in the office or they can resign, they talk about this terrible, terrible backup of traffic and the delay. Like, I remember when COVID happened and they talked about how global warming was being affected because less people were out driving, like no one was out. And I'm sure that we've just completely reversed that. Like, that's one thing about myself, things that are unnecessary that people are doing, especially doing every day, and now like thousands of people doing, it's just terrible. One thing about pretty much everyone, someone in your home has to work a job, and because we have to pay bills, we don't want to be homeless, obviously. So it's just unfortunate that it's so much of your life. There's so much life to live. There's so many things to see, but because we want to just keep a roof over our head, we are at the mercy of our employer, and it can impact you in so many different ways. So that's kind of just a little update. This is another bump in the road, maybe like halfway through our journey. Everything was smooth sailing. It was fine, but then other things happened, you know, my mental health, and now this is a big part of it. Obviously, I've cut my hours by 50%, so my income is cut by 50%, and we are mainly relying on my husband's income. I'm thankful that our expenses are low, and he still makes an amount of money that we are super happy with, thankful for, but this is something that we were not expecting, and it does get a little frustrating when you think about how much control or lack of control you have over your own situation. So I don't know if anybody else can relate. I'm definitely feeling for anyone who has been laid off recently or furloughed recently. And I hope that you can find another way to make ends meet. It does make me thankful that I found a way to have more than one source of income. Even though it's not a ton of money, it can kind of make up what we had lost on. So thank you so much for watching. And if you are new, subscribe. And I will see you next time.